so
Um,
much for your time, and
of
congratulations on
course.
all the success with him.
Thank
It's
you.
really excited to talk about it with you because I have also noticed the this interesting transition we're feeling into more reality television, and it's something that seems like we're just going to get deeper and deeper with as the
Yeah.
television landscape is growing.
Writer strike,
Yeah,
right?
do it. That'll
That's what
do it.
Yeah.
happens, you know, like the writers go on strike and we turn to reality and unscripted content because you don't have to pay people as much or at all.
Yeah, and no, you're right. And honestly, that's what your movie kind of shows with not just how like the crews exploited, the contestants are exploited. And I really think that's something I kind of want to dive into because I know that the movie Him takes a lot of inspiration from shows like The Bachelor, but
Mhm.
were there any other influences from either your experience watching reality television or even cinematic experiences that you had for the film?
Yeah, I mean, I consider myself a scholar of reality television, especially Bachelor Nation. But you know, I've always kind of been in the weeds with it and like watching these shows on like a meta level. And so there are, many things that I think have come from multiple shows. I think something Rebecca likes to say is that this film was kind of like Handmaid's Tale in a sense, where like, in the Handmaid's Tale, everything that happens to, the women in that story has happened to women at some point in some oppressive regime in history. And that's kind of what happens in our film too, is that nothing or like everything that happens has been documented as having happened on some show at some point in reality TV, which seems a little crazy, but it's true. So whether that's like from something on The Bachelor or The Real World or Love Is Blind, it's they're all kind of doing the same thing one way or another.
Say, what sort of triggered the interest? Like, what sort of kind of got you going on this path?
I love this
Um,
story, Tess. You should tell the whole thing.
okay. So it was actually my brother was in a frat when he was in college, and they watched The Bachelorette every night, every Monday night, and they would make Alfredo, and he was the commissioner of the Bachelorette Fantasy League. And my mom knew that my brother would respond more quickly to texts if it was during bachelor time because she knew he was going to be on his phone like doing like the stats or whatever. And so she started watching it because of him. And I was with my parents, like in Florida. We were on a trip, and my mom was like, "Oh, we got to get back from dinner by like 8 p.m. because the new Bachelorette season starting tonight. I got to watch it so I can text him." And I was like, "Okay, I'll watch it with you." And then my life changed. And so I really got into it again, like on a deep level. And, I remember watching this one season of The Bachelor where this guy Ari, got engaged to this woman. They were engaged for 3 months, and after 3 months, he was like, "Ooh, I made the wrong decision. I need to go back
Yeah.
to my second choice." So that's what he does. And the woman that he originally was engaged with, this woman Becca that he broke up with, they make her the Bachelorette as kind of a like, sorry that you got broken up with, reward. And when they announced her as the Bachelorette at the reunion show, she's sitting on this couch on stage, surrounded by all her friends from the show. They're all hugging each other, and the host says, "Oh, all the guys on your season are going to have to compete with that." And she says, "Yeah, I did find love here." And she's talking about her friends. And
Mhm.
I thought that was really interesting because I was like, you just got traumatized on television nationally, and this guy
Mhm.
broke up with you out of the blue, and now you're sitting here with all your girlfriends, and you're like, "I'm going to be fine." And I just thought that was so like ripe for storytelling because I was like, I kind
Mhm.
of care more about why they're all tight than I do about the guy.
Yeah.
So that's how it started.
Yeah, and then I came on board Tess when Tess, originally conceived of this story, and I knew nothing, and started learning about it. So I actually like read about it first, before I even watched a single season. But Tess gave me like, my study list, and like people have PhDs in this now, and like Tess should get an honorary one. So if I don't know, I don't know, NYU, if you're watching, like give this girl an honorary PhD in Bachelor Nation. But anyway, yeah, so she trained me. And so I came into it from the perspective of this sort of like meta method of watching, knowing what's going on behind the scenes. And yet, even never having watched a moment of The Bachelor in my life, learning that at baseline, they don't get paid. They have to provide all their own clothing. They have to bring enough clothing for like potentially every date in any climate, potentially gowns for every rose ceremony. Like these things absolutely blew my mind, only knowing the most basic cultural elements of The Bachelor. And I knew that like Tess was deeply onto something, and it's something that like we can and still love to talk about 5 years later because it's always evolving and there's always more to unpack.
Yeah, because what struck me in the film, and a lot of this also had to do test with your character, are the scenes
Mhm.
where it felt like well, not even felt like it was, they were manipulating the contestants and exposing so many of their vulnerabilities
Mhm.
to sort of drive this competition. And was there a moment kind of in when you were in your performance, like was there a moment in film where you felt like the character just clicked for you, where you just felt like where it just really, really hit you and you felt really in sync with what your character was feeling?
Yeah, well, I mean, our first day was the scene where I have the interview,
Yeah.
the like outdoor interview where she is manipulated. So it kind of really got me into it right from
That
the
was your first
start.
day?
Yeah, yeah, that
Yeah.
was the first scene I shot. And it was raining outside, and there was also a wedding in the distance on a golf course, and you could hear like "Celebrate Good Times" come on, like in the
That's too
background.
perfect.
Luck, they got it, and I couldn't believe they edited that out because I was so worried. Like you can hear that in all the footage,
You sure could.
but it was that was a great thing to start off with because it kind of just like set you up for the thing that like, yeah, this is the only time we see this happening to her in the film, but you gotta, know that this would have been happening to her for like 10 weeks already.
Mhm.
And to the point where they're like, we'll get you pizza if you like talk shit about someone, where she's like, all right, I'll do it, like I'll take that pizza. Like I'm desperate here. It's not even like a negotiation, it's just give it to me. Whereas like, the first time you're asked to do that, you might kind of be like, what? But
Mhm.
I don't have a problem with her, and that's a real tactic too. I remember reading an interview with a Bachelor contestant where they said that they told her like, if you did that sort of like, can you talk about this in your interview, we'll let you listen to music on the plane, because they don't have
Wow.
their iPods, they don't have their phones, or like, we'll let you guys watch a movie if you do this, and when you don't have anything else to do all day, a movie might sound like the best thing you could imagine. So,
Like I was blown away. Like I know that there was always this privacy obsession with reality television.
mhm.
That level of isolation, is that kind of manipulation? Is like that's also a factor?
Yeah, all you can do is think about him, right? If you can't watch TV, you can't be on your phone ever. Like sometimes they'll give you a journal, but like they'll read it. Yeah, it's a echo chamber of thoughts about yourself and this guy that you like don't actually know at all,
Mhm.
because how could you? So it gives you all the time in the world to just project everything that you need to on him.
And that seems like that's where a lot of like I mean, I know like I don't like this film is kind of a horror film, and a lot of that horror
Yeah.
come from just how much, not just the abuse, but how much they really just made this one guy and the goal of getting married the only thing on their mind.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And and I think that like something that I do find frustrating about like, your general average watcher of reality TV is like you get to the end and all the girls are saying I love you, right? And the Bachelor's saying, the tears of love, right? We don't need to get into all those details right now, but they're like, that's impossible. She couldn't possibly love him. That doesn't make any sense. And I really hope that like and we have found that it does. I really hope that our movie sheds light on like psychologically why she believes she's in love with him.
Mhm.
And in fact is. And that might change the second they get on an airplane to leave. It might change in 2 months. It might never change if you're really lucky. But
Mhm.
but they believe it because it is real. They're experiencing something real.
And they're sort of like drawing on that for basically draw button ratings.
Yeah, yeah. Psychological
Mhm.
manipulation for I don't know entertainment.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
And
messy.
it's the kind of thing too where, they're you know, guided into like, when's the right time to say I love
Mhm.
you? Or, like, well, if you don't do it by then, what if he tells it to someone else? Like, you got to do it now, that sort of thing, which means that maybe you might be sharing your feelings before you're ready to, which happens
Mhm.
to the women in this film as well. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah, you both kind of play with that a lot actually in the film, where it's like a lot of the dialogue kind of stems from, oh, this contestant already had this first date, or oh, test, or I had this woman alone and already said this. So what
Yeah.
do you got to say so that way you can get on that next level?
Right. You're gonna have to try
Mhm.
harder if you want to stay in the game. Yeah.
Well, also, like one of the things that your film does really well is the chemistry with all of the actresses. I thought was a very strong point. Rebecca, what did you sort of do to kind of help build that chemistry with everybody?
Yeah, so Tess and I are really lucky in that we have a lot of talented, funny people in our networks. So we started with Tess, and then the first two, we reached out to folks that we knew for Claire, Savannah, and Jenna. And when they all said yes, we were able to, in the writing of it, craft those characters to specifically you know, um, meet those actresses and like their unique qualities, their unique styles of humor, their backgrounds, that kind of thing. And the missing piece was Adrian, who's the youngest, the unemployed MIT dropout, health insurance, And so we did a search for her, which we did ourselves because I used to be a casting director for theater. So, and it was crazy. We got thousands of submissions, right? And I think, what did we see? 40 tapes in the end. And we went into our meeting having watched all these auditions, and we're like, well, it's Lucy. Like, not a doubt in either of our minds. Number one, no question. I had a number two. Tess didn't even have a number two. And so we did, like, a Zoom with her to make sure she was also a cool person. And she was. And so I think that, like, the fact that we both knew she would fit in, um,
Mhm.
the fact that we both agreed she was right meant that she was going to fit in with the group. And they were all so close on set. All the behind the scenes pictures of everyone. I don't know. I think they really bonded. I think a lot of true friendships were formed there, which is very cool. And yeah, and I love directing ensembles of women. So
Nice. And I do think it was an interesting creative choice to like not have the guy that they're all fight that
Mhm.
everything's about even like really be a presence. I think you did a great job kind of making the women the focus while still having his presence kind of looming over everything.
yeah, and that allows you to, project whatever you want on him. I
Mhm.
think each of the actors, they all did really great work leading up to the shoot. They had to. We shot this in 15 days. You have to be so on top of your stuff, your shit, whatever, put whatever you want there. And uh, I met with each of them in advance, talked about character, talked about their backgrounds, etc. And like, but I would still constantly be surprised on set to learn that like Margaret had given her character like not only a last name but also an entire backstory, and like she knew who he was to her. I think they each knew who he was, but it also like ultimately doesn't matter because it's not about him in the end.
Right.
Yeah. And it also kind of mirrors the experience that these contestants
Yeah.
have, where they are alone, not seeing this guy for hours out of the day, yet that's the only thing that they're kind of allowed to or able to talk or think about, you know? And so it's a little real to that experience as well.
Yeah.
You mentioned before that the emotions that everyone's feeling are real throughout this whole experience. And I guess this is more a question for Tess in terms of writing these characters, because you did make sure to do a great job showing how honest these feelings were without necessarily blaming the victims for anything. Like you made it clear that this was abuse while still validating that the emotions they were feeling were real. Can you explain kind of how you towed that line as a writer?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really like interesting, scenario given the fact that you can say like these people signed up for this, right? And I think that's a common kind of criticism that people who don't really engage with like the mechanics of these shows, they'll say like, well, why are they complaining? They signed up for it. I heard this really wonderful kind of analogy. I've been going back and watching old seasons of Survivor, and I was watching David versus Goliath, and there's this character Christian who is amazing, one of my favorite players of all time, and he says in the reunion, like, people tell you like, oh, you knew what you signed up for. This is Survivor. Like, it's gonna be hard. And he was like, and I agree to an extent, but it's kind of like the first day of school, where like you're starting high school, and like, you know what high school is. You've seen it in movies, you've heard what it's like. Maybe your older brother already went to high school, but you don't know what it's like until you're actually there and you have
Right.
your own experience in high school. And maybe there are bullies, and maybe they try to steal your lunch, or maybe you're not making friends, or maybe a teacher hates you or something. And so you know what you signed up for on this like macro scale, but on the micro scale, you don't.
Right.
And it's really not like a fair criticism, because everybody has a different experience. I think you can say you know what you signed up for in terms of the like, there's going to be a fantasy suite, there's going to be a date, you might get married at the end. Like, the structure of the show, but the actual experience of being a contestant is a completely different thing that none of us as audience people at home are aware of. And so I think that was something I tried to explore, was this idea of like, I put myself here, I'm partially responsible like for this, but at the same time, I didn't sign up for this. I didn't sign up to be abused.
We all sign stuff every day, like, but it's not. You think it's not going to happen to me, right? Sign. All those pages. What does she say? Those contracts were so long, you guys. But we sign off on a lot of stuff.
That's honestly, I mean, that's the questions I have. And I'm really, again, congratulations on the film. And thank you so much for your time. And I hope you have a great rest of the day. Of course, of course. All right, have a great rest of the day.
Yeah.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.